Like, greetings, I am Pillar Nexus, the Ancient Gladiator, today with just chatting about where my tabletop game collection is right now, and um, just chatting about tabletop games in general, because why not? Also, I'm kind of in the process of uh, rearranging my shelf setup, so might as well take everything down and then figure out where it's all going to go. All right, let's start off with one of my personal favorites. Soccer Arms. This particular set is all three sets together in one box. What I like about the game is the aesthetic. This is a game mainly for two players of selecting your goddesses, building your decks with their cards, and then taking turns, drawing cards, taking actions to close the distance or protect yourself or make attacks. Eventually, your deck of cards will run out, and you will have to burn life to become flare to reshuffle the deck, and eventually your life will run out. The question is, will you be able to defeat your opponent first? You know, if you only had one set, then that's like for two players. But with three sets, I've got three boards, three sets of Sakura tokens. I could potentially have up to six players playing this game and have this kind of tournament setup of one person playing against everyone else over the course of a session. You know, that's something I really want to do is set aside a day, get people together, and just do a kind of tournament of fun. So just people playing against each other with this game. The only thing is I have to teach people how to play and hope they remember. So I just I just want to play this game. That's part of why I started the whole Showdown series in the first place. Yeah. Anyway, set that off the side and bring up the next one. Yeah, if you have any questions or you want to say, comment on anything, feel free to do so. I'm going to talk about games in between. Globalization, game of ultimately collecting sets. You're collecting certain industries, certain numbers, certain regions, and trying to build up a valuable portfolio of business. The income you get is from a deck of cards, so it's very random, and it's entirely possible to get screwed over by that randomness. one of your mitigating factors is building factories and, if absolutely necessary, taking it public, which makes it available for everyone's portfolio. But it's a way to make some money off that to cover your debts. I like there's some of the humor lands, some of it doesn't. But ultimately, it's not a super in deep game. You just have to explain the just the basics of getting businesses. The auction is probably one of the tougher parts of the game because you might end up screwed out of a business because you didn't build an office in a certain spot. Having to build offices is the other tricky thing. It's it's okay. It's all right. Ostensibly, I'm going through these games in the process of the game store auction coming up, potentially removing a few games from my collection. I'm still thinking it over. Settlers of Catan, a game I picked up at a thrift store for a shockingly low $3. All right, it's a classic. It's part of the foundation for the last 2.5 decades of game design, almost 3 decades probably. Um, it's not stupidly complicated like some games. It is, however, there are other kind of development games that do things better. But you're building roads and building cities and gathering resources to do stuff like build more roads and more cities. And just trying to reach 10 points first. This game has been expanded so much. It's it's pretty popular. Even even though I don't really get to play it, I respect where it stands in gaming history. But they've really done a lot with expanding out the game. It's kind of crazy to see. Um, they've made like a 3D version of the base game and Seafarers. And it's like, holy crap, who's going to spend like $750 on the those 3D, those 3D versions? All right, next game. So I was doing a kind of a practice run of a video earlier, and I got interrupted, so I couldn't finish. Did the internet just go out? What the hell? Okay, so apparently uh, all right, apparently OBS just like crashed on me. So let's take a few steps back to where I started this. So yeah, I was doing a practice run of a video, and I got kind of interrupted. I couldn't really do the video, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna stream this instead. But during the practice run, this was the first game that I featured. So, Core of the Dead, love the aesthetic, love the kind of grimdark, um, kind of. There's a war between heaven and hell, and they both suck. And it's the underworld that's actually standing up for mortals, and they're trying to build up enough influence to, stand between heaven and hell and stand up for mortals and try to do better with the situation. But yeah, the sculpts for the pieces are nice. The actual gameplay is interesting. You place figures on areas in an effort to have the most figures on those areas, so that when resolving locations, if you have the most, you can get the benefit of being in that location. But then there's stuff like Dread Script, and there's a potential to lose control of those areas. And then there's also the Celestial Tide where players do kind of have to work together or things go horribly wrong. This is a game I really want to play a lot, but every time I take it down to the game store, we have 5 players, or they want to play a train game. Nothing wrong with train games. I just really want to play my game. All right. Why is it telling me no data on? Uh, oh, there is. Excellent connection. Okay. I seem to have connection issues. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm going to try to go as long as I possibly can with this. All right. We have Three Kingdoms redo. Um, it is a strictly 3-player game, which is rare but interesting. I'm not familiar with the source material. I just picked up this game because the last time I played it with someone else, I played their copy, and I really enjoyed playing it. It is like Court of the Dead. You're replacing people to, um, in the hopes that having the most influence there, you'll take control of the area to get the benefit of it for that turn. And um, you'll gather peasants, train them into soldiers by arming them with various equipment, spears, bows, horses, boats, and fight on battlefields and try to take control of those for winning the military victory. There's working on your farming and markets. There's um, spending time with the Han Emperor to get into his circle of influence and potentially win the game that way. Um, I, if I want if I want only one little upgrade for the game, it's something to uh, know how to pronounce the names so I don't sound like an idiot. One of the people who one of the people I play with has this game and they have read the book or books, um, and they understand how to pronounce it. And I am curious about the books myself. We'll see though. Get some time to do some more reading one of these days. Next game, Stellar Conquest, one of the foundational 4X board games of going out into space, discovering planets. Maybe they don't have any usable planets in the system, or maybe they have mineral-rich planets for better industry. The one thing I did do for this game was, well, token containers and replace the dice because I would like to play this game at some point. My one issue is like the whole honor system of secretly recording stuff. You know, I imagine you could do like a post game honor check to see if people are playing, correctly. I like the little technology approach of you can kind of choose which one to go with per level, but also maybe invest in other types of technology as well. This is an important foundational game for space conquest type games, so I can respect it for its place in history there. All right, next game. Some of these are heavy as hell. All right, we got Fire and Axe, a Viking saga. You will prepare your ships with people and trade goods. You will brave the waters, um, trade with other regions, raid their cities, and then settle. And things are easier to raid and settle if you've traded, but that takes time. In the meantime, you're also trying to complete these sagas, which are worth points per saga if you have the most or second most of a given kind. There's the Denmark sagas, the Norway sagas, the Sweden sagas. There's also the bonus for taking down the most cities. Taking down cities is also worth points on their own. And of course, the points are represented with treasure. So there's, yeah. It's just kind of fun. It's fun. It's kind of random. It's a little bit. The rune cards really add some wild effects to the game. Or you can use them to change the wind. Actually, you can use them to change the wind and do their effect. So, yeah, the wind dial. So there's a previous edition, and the wind dial was like a plus 0 or minus, and you'd have to do the math manually. The dial for this one figures it in. That said, I kind of like the way the previous edition looks, especially where I don't know, the ship tiles look okay, but the shields from the previous edition are more interesting. But yeah, just a fun game of sailing around and wreaking havoc, and then having to come back to the wintering zone when you run out of people. All right, next game. Yeah, the only thing is you can't really directly fight someone. You kind of have to use the rune cards to mess with people. However, you can directly fight your opponents in the Witcher Old World, where you'll be a Witcher from a school. You'll be playing cards to go around and deal with locations, potentially gamble, potentially get more potions, build up your experience, get more cards, mess with your deck, um, and ultimately fight monsters because you are a Witcher. Connection okay? All right. Um, you fight monsters, you get the trophy, and the trophy provides a benefit. But every time you win a fight, you suffer fatigue, you lose cards out of your deck permanently. Yeah, I like the combat system being kind of a card base. Um, build your deck as you go along. Um, think strategically about how to combo uh, your moves. Utilize alchemy to your advantage. It's this is a fun adventure game. It really is. You can go explore cities or the wilderness. Um, you can fight other witchers, and claiming one of their trophies is kind of funny. A little funny quote, and you'll have access to their abilities effectively. There are a ton of expansions for this, and I'm thinking about picking them up at some point. There are a lot of games with expansions I need to think about whether or not it's worth picking up or not. Right, next game. Uh, Various stand, Wars of the Reformation. So, in case you've missed the times I've said it before, I consider myself to be spiritually independent. That said, I have a great curiosity about religion and mythology and spirituality and all that stuff. This is that historical period, um, you know, Martin Luther and all that other stuff going on around the same time. The papacy is dealing with their counter Reformation. King Henry is dealing with his wives. Um, France and Austria and the Ottoman Turks are doing their own thing. And it's a card. You play cards to do stuff, and try to achieve your specific faction goals. And there's quite a bit to it. There's also fighting. There's a lot to figure out in this game. I want to play this at least once. I don't want to sell it before I've played it at least once. I like games. I've also said before. I like games where you can mess with history, and this is one of them. It's a good way to learn about the history of that time period and how things um, kind of went and kind of shaped the way things ended up going. But at the same time, you can potentially make things go in a really weird way. So there's that. There's that fun to be had with messing with history. Next game, also history. More straightforward game of war. Commands and colors ancients. Rome versus Carthage. You know, if you never played this before, but you've played Memoir 44 or Battle Lore, it's not too far off. So, I just I like the presentation, the the options for terrain, and the wooden blocks and the dice and everything. I want to get more mileage out of the two-player games that I have. I wanted to find someone I could play with on like a weekly or monthly basis of just playing this, going through the campaign, and experiencing that history. Yeah, it's it's just interesting to me to again to mess with that history. But I like the kind of chess like I need to think of. But your moves are also kind of constrained by the cards. So depending on what you might be trying to do, the cards might drive you towards doing something else. More connection issues again. Seriously, yeah. This stream might be cursed because I keep seeing OBS dip out on me or whatever. I will do my best to keep on going though. Constantinopolis, another game in history of uh, running your farms and your other buildings and taking on contracts and getting ships and shipping the goods with the contract to make money, to earn fame, and fame is how you win the game. But the money also helps too. It's it's a game that I like, for having quite a bit of things you can work with. Maybe you want to invest in the yellow buildings to make some extra money or fame when you can't guarantee that the contracts are going to help you. Or you might invest in the trade houses and have more options to work with contract wise. Building up your production gives you more contracts. Having more ships means you can ship more things, especially passengers. Passengers only provide money, but you don't have to provide anything other than the ship to make money off of them. And then there's a way to donate some goods for fame at the end of the turn before you discard down on your goods. There's just a lot of possibilities to work with in the game, and there's just a lot of room to just try different things. But ultimately, it is a game of production and shipping. And money. You know me, I like my captions. Alright, a bit of a drink before we get the next game. Alright, next game is Lords of Waterdeep, and yes, I have to have a little binding thing on it because this game does not keep together too well. It's set in the Dungeons and Dragons game setting of wherever the hell Waterdeep is. Um, Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms. You'll have your agents, you'll have your quests, you'll be placing your agents to get the things you need to complete the quests that get you the points to win the game. You can get adventurers and money and intrigue cards. You're also trying to fulfill your secret lord objectives. This game is just dripping with flavor, and I love it for being so, all this lore going for it, all bits of flavor on the cards. It's fun. I like the building aspect of you can build something, someone else can use it, and you get a little benefit for them using it. So it's kind of to your best interest to build things that other people might want to make use of. All right. But put some of these games on the floor because I'm running out of space on my bed for these. All right. Executive Decision. I used to own it, then I found it at a thrift store for, you know, not too expensive. A game of secretly putting in orders to buy materials and hoping that you bid enough to not bid too low and end up not getting anything. And then putting those materials towards making things and hoping you're selling them um, high enough to make a good amount of money on it, but not so high that it um, drops the price and nobody wants to buy it at your price. You can indirectly mess with your opponents with what you end up buying or selling. And there's also rules to kind of soften the blow of if you bid too low for buying materials or too high for selling products, that you can still buy or sell something, but at not as many as you could have done. This is the game that I wanted to think about doing an EVE Online reskin of, but I don't know if I'll get around to that. It's just an interesting approach to business. It's also one of the early approaches to business that actually makes sense. Monopoly makes no fucking. It's just so random as hell. But it's this is a game that is fairly easy to do as a play by email kind of game with a group of players. Like, okay, here's what the prices are right now. What are your orders for materials? Okay. Here's what you got for your for buying materials. Um, Here are the prices for selling goods. Put in your orders for what you're going to sell and what resources you're giving up for it. Because you can substitute certain resources, higher grade for lower, if you just happen to be stuck with higher grade stuff. Yeah, just a game from history, so it's fun to have. Next game. Oh, Android Infiltration. This is like one of the last few Android games I had yet to pick up. I still have not picked up Android Netrunner, and I don't know if I ever will. It's out of print, and some of it's kind of expensive. But this game, you are part of a group that is breaking into a facility to take data and potentially an Android prototype that's supposed to be revolutionary. And that's worth points. However, you're not necessarily working together. You have your own agenda of trying to get the most data and escape the facility before Big Damn Security shows up and arrests everybody. So there's, there's a definitive timer on the game, but it's also uh, kind of uncertain. You can kind of estimate I've got at least this many turns left on average, but then you have to hope you can actually get out in time. Uh, if you end up wounded, you are basically screwed. Unless you can get to an infirmary or find a med kit, you're basically stuck going very slowly in or out of the facility. This is definitely one to play, uh, you know, with a big group for fun. I think if you take the game too seriously, it's not as fun. You just see it as just kind of a crazy heist film of everyone's not really working together as well as they should be. I think it's more fun to think about it like that. And also, yay, more cyberpunk. I'm gonna drink break. All right, more Mountain Dew because I need the energy to keep going today. We got Adrenaline, a first-person shooter inspired game of running around a map, picking up weapons and ammo, attacking your opponents, contributing to the demise of your opponents can get you points. Um, Getting in the kill shot potentially gets you bonus points at the end. Um, Items do various things. The game is very symbol heavy of using things like a blood drop for damage, a blast symbol for everyone in the room gets hit, um, a little bullseye kind of thing to represent a mark. The expansion for this game is critical. There are a lot of games where, excuse me, the expansion has has to be there. Team Play DLC introduces a sixth character and introduces character specific stuff. Your characters are actually characters. Ooh, excuse me. Like they can use item cards certain ways. They can take adrenaline actions is a new thing. You can shorten your life and potentially have greater power open to you. And then there's team versus team mode. Potentially up to three players, each controlling one character, or one player controlling three characters. You know, fight it out. Team versus team stuff is interesting. You know, it requires a little more coordination, a lot of communication, just making sure things mesh together. When I think of team versus team stuff, I think of the World of Warcraft board game, and that's another game that I'm gonna have to keep an eye open for during the auction. But yeah, Adrenaline. It's fun. It's fairly quick. When people know what they're doing and they're not messing around too much. The map being like anywhere from 10 to 12 spaces is it makes it harder to escape. It makes it harder to mess around with, running away. This is the game that nailed the first person shooter on the tabletop experience. Don't get me started on Frag. Frag has a lot of issues. This is the game that I recommend. If that's what you want. Next game is Francis Drake. You will be preparing for the voyage into the Spanish Main, causing havoc, trading goods, getting treasure, and ultimately trying to have the most points at the end. It's like you have to prepare to do stuff, but if you don't prepare the right way, there are things you'll miss out on. You can really mess with your players in the preparation stage. There's also secretly planning where you're going first, which can also mess with players. But if you prepared certain supplies to a degree that no one else has, then you know you're secured in going after that last. There's an expansion for this game that takes it up to 6 players. I'm thinking about going for it at some point. But for now, this is a good 3 to 5 player game. Alright. I'm starting to realize that there's a lot of games I have that are feature uh, tips and making money. Uh, just, just, just what I like, I guess. Oh, it's kind of crazy how heavy a lot of my games are. There's a fairly heavy one in Clash of Cultures Monumental Edition. You have a civilization, and it's an actual civilization that has actual abilities that are unlocked when you get certain technologies. Every turn, you'll have a number of actions to move your settlers, build cities, move your warriors, fight barbarians and other civilizations, potentially build up your technology, build up your resources, expand things out, and it's a good kind of epic experience that's not epic length. I think of other Civ games and how long those go. This is a good amount of time for a good experience of building a civilization. You know, I like that the objective cards are like 2 options, and you can either achieve one or the other. I like that the wonders for this edition are plastic. In the previous edition of the game, they were cardboard and they're safer. Yeah. But having the plastic ones looks really awesome. I just really love the sculpts that they do for this game because seeing them on a tabletop is just so nice. Yeah. This came out fairly recently enough. If you like building civilizations, this is one to go for. The exploration aspect is also pretty cool too. All right, next game. Eve Conquest. Yeah, yeah, I'll drink. In this game, you play as one of the four empires: Amar, Kaldari, Galente, Imitar. They are functionally the same. But you'll start out with your headquarters and some initial development, and you'll have your seals. If you can get any starting outposts, you can potentially have your seals later or earlier by using resources. Um, it's it's an interesting game. It's you have this political landscape, and you're trying to get outposts on certain areas and have them linked either by the same nebula or in the arbitrary columns of A, B, and C. And the fact that it changes every game is, keeps that a little bit of a surprise. You can get project cards that improve your combat, improve your logistics, improve the points you get if you manage to pull off the arbitrary column of region linking. And then the units are represented with these little like poker chips. And like for each unit, you get a D10 of either attack, defense, or tactics. Your choice. You could go with defense and tactics, defending against an attack. You could go with attack and tactics, leading the attack. And combat can be kind of rough, but you're trying to eliminate your opponent's outposts so you can take their point cards away from them if you're struggling to get any yourself. But you have to hit their high level regions to take the high level points. You know, it's it's also got some flexibility with the way you can end the game. You can set it to end at a certain points level or end after a certain number of calendar years have passed. The little seals on the calendar thing, that's like one of my favorite things in this. Yeah. The only thing is I want to kind of paint the seals partly the color of the Empire while still remaining the color of the action. Another thing you can have are agents in locations that if you have more agents in where you're fighting against than they have in where you're fighting from, you can potentially ask them what dice you're going to roll, and they're stuck by that answer. Yeah, Eve Conquest, good game. Good luck finding a copy. It's one of those. Eve Conquest has been one of those games I've like bought and sold a number of times. I'm not selling it. I'm not selling it this time. But one of the things I like to do with it is figure out unique faction stuff, because that's probably one of the things about the game that kind of bugs me is the factions are functionally the same. All right. Next game is you've seen it recently. Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game. You'll have your civilization. You'll develop your technology through building up trade. You'll save on trade by having your economics up. It'll be it'll be a journey to either hit your technology victory, your economic victory, your military victory, or your culture victory. You can get culture by having wonders and using certain cards to get culture points and spend those. There's great people you can have, there's wonders you can build, there's armies you can develop. Your technologies can open up new buildings for you or upgraded buildings. There's a lot of possibilities with this game, and I think it's great. This is another one where it's good to have the expansions. It's the expansions open up so much for this game. Unfortunately, one, this game is out of print. And two, the expansions are horribly expensive. For some reason, the base game is cheaper to get, but good luck getting the expansions. I like this one for its variety of how you can kind of achieve victory and all that. The only thing that bugs me about this one is it's stuck on the square grid. You know, these the square grid I have for my table here. Um, where Clash of Cultures has the hexagons and or the hex clusters for that, and there's the New Dawn's hex clusters. It's all right. It's all right anyway, but I like my Civ games more with the hexagons. But this is still a great game. This is, however, um, the secondary version that replaces China's leader with Wu Zetian. The previous China's leader, you can probably guess, and if you know, then you probably understand why I had to switch it out. Anyway, on to the next game. My short featuring this game was featured on another video recently. I was kind of surprised that I featured Power Grid, a game of buying power plants at an auction. So good luck managing your money there. Buying the materials, good luck getting those for cheap. And building your power network. You need all three things to make money. So you have to budget accordingly. And it's possible for players to mess with each other either like with the auction or with the materials market or with the actual locations on the map. This game has a lot of expansions for different maps that have their own special rules to them, which is interesting. Um, and it's a decent amount of time for a game. I just, it does feel like sometimes there's a bit of a runaway problem of if someone can kind of get the lead on cities and being able to power them, it is extremely difficult to try and get past them. Even if they're buying plants, having to spend a lot of money on plants first, or having to spend more money on materials from going last, or having to choose from more expensive location options because they're going last in, buying into cities. They're usually in a position where it's kind of hard to catch them anyway. But it's possible. It's possible to mess with them enough just to make them pay enough and maybe shut them down. But it is a classic game. As recent as it is, it's still classic enough to me. So, Power Grid, that's fun. All right. Speaking of games with lots of extra maps to work with, Concordia, a game of you've got your cards that let you do stuff. You have your people on the map to either, to lock up routes and build your production facilities. Use your cards to move your people to build new buildings, to generate your resources, maybe sell them for money, use the resources towards other stuff. Get more people to have more cards in hand to work with. The game, to me, sometimes feels a little bit like a programming kind of thing, except it's not like a hard, you have to, not a hard, you have to program stuff. It's, you look at your cards and you figure out what order you're going to play them in, unless something happens and you might have to play something a little bit sooner or later. You know, you have to pick a path you want to focus on for building up your points and then get the cards that also help with that path to exponentially grow your points. So, like, you get the cards that count how many people you have out and score, you know, a couple points per. You get a bunch of those cards, and then you get all your people out. You get a ton of points. There's other things that get points, like having money at the end, um, having non-brick production facilities. I think um, having all the different kinds of production, uh, building in all the different regions. Certain cards require you to have certain production buildings, like Mason or Vintner. And all the points are figured out at the end of the game. There's no getting points during the game. You get them at the end. So you really don't have an idea of who's really doing too well unless you're paying attention to what cards they're buying and what they're actually doing. So you never know who's winning until the end, but you can kind of guess if you're paying enough attention. But this one also has quite a bit of expansions, mostly in the form of maps. Um, there's also stuff like Salsa and Venus. But for me, one of the things I was looking at was this game has a viable solo mode called Solitaria. Yeah. And I'm always curious about games that offer a way to play solo. And last time I tried playing solo, I got my butt kicked by the game. So I'll have to try it again. Yeah, it's just a fun game of building things and just trying your best with playing your cards in the right order to make the most efficient use of them. Drink break. Then on to the next game. Yeah, so many of these games are freaking heavy. If I ever have to move, this is Gus. Anyway, hegemony. Lead your class to victory. Play as the working class, the capitalist, the middle class, or the state, and you're trying to fulfill your faction goals of prosperity or money or legitimacy with the other classes as a state. You're trying to take care of certain things on your turn with your cards, um, like building a business or getting employees for the business or using your education to make your um, just uneducated employees into something specialized, or using healthcare to get more people to be employees, or you're the state and you're trying to get the other classes to like you, so you provide them with favors and stuff. There's also this kind of voting system of these policies that affect taxes and healthcare and education and the monetary foundation for how many loans the state can have and immigration and um, import and export stuff that people can vote on and try to guide the direction of the state in certain ways. It's just really interesting to kind of have this game that really, you know, makes you feel like there's this whole political mess to sort out, and you're trying to do your best with, your faction, even if the state is a mess. And then the expansions add in Crisis and Control adds in like a solo play, a new event deck that does things a little bit differently, um, some other stuff. some new cards for the factions as well. It's it is an interesting game to explore. It is, however, only 4 players. I seem to have an issue with like 4 player games when our group tends to be 5. What would a fifth player? What would a fifth faction be for this game? You know, yeah, I had a lot of fun with the one time that I played it, someone else's copy. So I ended up getting a copy for myself. And if I had freaking waited, there was a copy at a thrift store. It was a Kickstarter copy of all things. And it was just at a thrift store. It's like, who donated a game like this to a thrift store instead of like selling it on eBay or whatever? It's like, and of course I went to see if I could pick it up and, maybe sell it at the auction for cheap. The next day, and it was already gone. Somebody understood that this was a game worth getting, and they got it. Right. Next game. A fairly recent release of the classic Robo Rally. You have your robots, you program them, and they follow that program, trying to reach checkpoints and reach each checkpoint in order to win the race. But each robot also has lasers to shoot other robots and use upgrades to do crazy things. It's fun. It's wild. It's good for a big group of players. The older version of the game had 8 players, um, 8 players for it. This recent one is only 6, but I think it's still good even at 6. But yeah, this game's been around for quite a while. It is a game by Richard Garfield. If the name rings a bell, you're familiar with Magic the Gathering. But I guess this was the game he wanted to make. Um, you know, and Magic just happened to be a way to kind of act as a stepping stone towards getting Robo Rally out. But then Magic ended up being the bigger game. But Ro- but Robo Rally is just such a fun game. I love it. And of course, I have the expansions for this version. Um, if there's one thing I hope for with this version for a future expansion idea, it's Master Builder 2 featuring all uh the new map stuff. The teleporters and um the fire and the oil slicks and the water and all that fun stuff. I can hope. I can hope. All right. Next game, and this is the last one on my outer shelf before I go into the cabinet. So, one of the people I play with, I end up playing a lot of their games, that they bring to the game store, and it's because of those experiences I end up picking up games like Hegemony, Concordia, um, Three Kingdoms, but most of all, terraforming Mars. You have your corporation, you have your project cards to do stuff. There's a planet that needs to be turned into effectively a new Earth, and terraforming helps you get, you know, recognized by the world government. But the key to winning the game is ultimately focusing on points by not just doing that, but also looking at awards, funding awards that you try to achieve by the end of the game, or reaching milestones, or setting up cities and having greeneries around them, and getting points through all that stuff. Some of your project cards can get points too, like pets or security fleet. There's a good amount of expansions for this game already, and they just released a whole lot more. I don't know if I'll ever get the new stuff. But I have everything up through the new maps, Venus Next, Prelude, which is probably one of my favorite expansions for this game, Colonies, and Turmoil. They all add their own little things that make the game a little bit more interesting and either make the game take longer, or in the case of Prelude, speed it up just a little bit. But yeah, there's every game can turn out differently. Playing on a different map, playing with a different corporation, playing with different Prelude cards, different starting hand of projects, different colonies, different political craziness with turmoil, different, just different players trying different things. You know, one of the recent adventures I had playing this game, I was playing with Poseidon, and they focus on trying to get people to build colonies. And that was probably one of the more straightforward corporations because uh, a lot of the newer corporations showed up and were just did all sorts of wild stuff. But yeah, great game. Not letting it go anytime soon. And now I proceed into the main cabinet where I have most of my games. And we take a look and reminisce and try to remember the rules of all this, all this craziness. Linebacker football. Gridiron football, you have a team, your opponent has a team. You write down what play you're going to do as the offense. Defense then places their linebackers, and then you reveal your play, and depending on where the linebackers are, affects how much yardage you gain or lose, or possibly turn the ball over. One of the things the game is missing is the official rules to gridiron football. If you're going to have a game about gridiron football, please include the official rules to gridiron football of downs and yards and um, safeties and all that stuff. Because I ended up looking on Wikipedia for the rules for gridiron football, but I do like the fact that you've got this limited selection of people to work with to build your team, both offense and defense. So you have to decide carefully what you're going to end up focusing more on. You know, put your skilled people into the offensive side or into the defensive side. But even then, there's still die rolls that can make things go one way or another. But yeah, I remember finding it at an auction for cheap. I didn't really kind of get it at first, but something I get these weird moments of nostalgia where I just go searching for a game out of nowhere and like, yeah, I want this game again. Why not? So, linebacker football. And fun fact, the company for it is based up in like Denver. I don't think they're still around, but I always find it interesting when there's something from the state where I currently live. Shadow Hunters. I had to buy it used off of someone for $100, but it was totally worth it because I love this game. You are either a shadow, a hunter, or a bystander, and no one else knows who you are until you reveal your power or you're dead. You can go to you roll dice and end up in various locations to get access to cards that give you abilities or provide one-time benefits like restoring your health. There's also getting hermit cards to try and suss out who is who, what side they're on. One of the things that can mess with that are is the shadow known as the unknown. They get to lie, but if you're paying attention to how they respond to the hermit cards, you might be able to catch them lying and realize, oh, hey, this is the unknown. But yeah, it's it's definitely a fun party game. It goes very quickly. The art design, the art style is nice, and it's just a good game. It's definitely something I want to bring out for Halloween and play around that time and have fun with people playing Shadowhunters. All right, next game is Tokaido. We'll drink break. Hold up. There. Tokaido is a very relaxing game of going on a journey along the famous road of Japan. You'll gather landscape cards, souvenirs, hot springs. You'll meet people. You can make a little bit of money towards buying souvenirs and food. You can meet people. Um, you can buy food, which gives you a great deal of points. So you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. But ultimately, it's just about building this journey of discovery along this great road and just having fun with it. I think it's a good game just to relax with and with people who don't really want to min max stuff and just have a nice time. It's a good family game too. Next game, 20th Century, a game of developing your country with land tiles, which you'll have to bid for, science, research tiles, which give you access to institutions which enhance your cities or give you special one-time or multi-use benefits. Having to deal with environmental catastrophes with by bidding science, and then establishing where your new land is going to go, um, which city on a given tile the citizens are going to work on to produce more money, more science, and quality of life points. Quality of life is just straight up points. Money goes towards auctions for more land to further build up your country. Science goes towards dealing with catastrophes. If you're good with managing your money and your science, by the end of the game, you can get a bonus for having the most left over. But ultimately, it comes down to improving the quality of life by using recycling centers to remove trash from your land, using technology to improve environmental quality, which means your land is worth more points if it's free of trash. And also, it's worth a certain amount of points at a given level. What I like about this game is, you know, even with the whole environmental thing going, the solution is financial investment and scientific research. It's progressing forward, not reverting to the Stone Age. It's about making that progress through actually doing something constructive. But it's also just a fairly straightforward. There's not a whole lot of trying to figure out special abilities or whatever. Um, the the guide for the abilities is not too hard to figure out. It's just you have stuff to work with, make use of it. Yeah. Fun fact: 20th century and globalization are kind of or two games I had at a very specific period of my life. As like a certain turning point of we're we were moving out of this house and moving into a duplex. So that kind of it's kind of a fond memory of that time, even though the memory's kind of rough. Oh, yeah. Next game is Wasabi, a game of laying tiles down on a communal grid to complete your recipes to gain points. If you can complete a specific set of 10 recipes, you can instantly win. But more often than not, the grid is going to fill up first, and then the person with the most points wins. You get points for completing recipes of certain lengths. The longer the recipe, the more points it's worth. You can complete the recipe even if the tiles are in the wrong order, but if you have them in the correct order in like one direction, you get a bonus in the form of wasabi cubes. Also, completing recipes lets you take action cards, which lets you do stuff like stacking tiles on top of other tiles, removing tiles, doing other stuff. And the dreaded wasabi card, which locks down 4 tiles that cannot be used for a recipe. And I believe it also gets you a wasabi cube too. So there's some room for some messing with opponents in this game. Yeah, it's a quick game. It's not that hard, but there's still room for strategy. The only real like randomness is in whatever recipe cards you end up with. But even then, a lot of there's going to be a lot of overlap in the recipes between certain ingredients. Um, there's like certain recipes that use an ingredient where there's only one of them. So you really have to plan. You really have to get the level 5 recipe early and get that ingredient and just plan. Just plan the best you can for it and make the most of it. Yeah. Wasabi, they're supposed to be doing a reprint really freaking soon. So I'm curious to see how it turns out. Next game. Speaking of games getting a reprint, Endeavor. Technically, this one's getting a reimplementation called Endeavor Deep Sea, which, all things considered, I can't really blame them for wanting to um, take a different theme with Endeavor's engine. But I, I still enjoy the game for the gameplay. So, you have your empire. Every turn, you build a new building, you get new people, you pay the people that are occupying your buildings to be available to use again, and then you take your actions with your buildings, any blue tokens you pick up, until you run out of people or run out of places to put the people you have. And then gathering, you're trying to take over certain spaces. If you take over 2 spaces of a route, you get the token that's in between them. Spaces you take over will have tokens to take as well. You can potentially take trade cards by having enough people in the region, which expands your ability to build, bring people over, pay your people, or hold on to more cards. You can also work with other players and open up shipping to other regions, which will then open up getting trade cards from that region. It's I like the gameplay being fairly simple and using symbols fairly easy to figure out. and having a definitive, this game goes 7 rounds and then it's over. Uh, I'll just say that I like the gameplay. The theme, um, there are people who have issues with the theme, and I don't blame them, but the people I play with look past that, and yeah. Maybe the less said about the people I play with, better. But again, it's just the simplicity of the gameplay that that inspires me to hold on to it for the time being. Next game, I no longer have the original box for it, so I've had to store it into a container because it takes up less space. Ventura, you play as one of 4 families or factions trying to take over areas. You'll have access to armies and mercenary captains. You'll have captains to and advanced army stuff to go take over areas. Um, your captains can also potentially conscript local people uh, to kind of defend where you are. The the people you conscript tend to not have movement, so it's kind of hard to use them offensively. There's also room to like explore and find various things that are um, have certain terrain advantages, provide a certain amount of money that you'll need to keep up your armies. If you don't pay for them, you'll lose them. This was another um, games they could have thought about doing a certain way is if you buy this game brand new, these are not painted. I had to go through and paint these myself in order to make the numbers more visible. And then the battle system is kind of odd, where you'll set up your captain and the order of um, your units. There's no dice rolling for combat in this game. You set up your cards, you get that ranged phase, you get a melee phase, there's potential for retreat, and then there's more melee until units are dead or somebody retreats. It is a very brutal combat kind of game. Ultimately, the goal is to get to 30 victory points. I've seen suggestions say play to 50 so that you actually gets a better overall experience, even though it takes a little bit longer. And then the book itself actually features some history on the 4 families of Este, Medici, Gonzaga, Visconti. Again, I like games that you can kind of mess with history a bit. Yeah, it's just. I remember one of the last times I played this game, and one of the statements that came up was, "But if they're dead, I don't have to pay for them." It's one of those kinds of games. Yeah. All right. Next game is Anima Shadow of Omega. This is not the original box, but I decided to save some of the original box stuff and tape and glue it to the card box. You'll have your your single adventurer and some advantage cards, and you'll be going to different areas, potentially having to deal with trouble getting into those areas. And while you're there, you can explore and potentially have to deal with more enemies, but also recruit new adventurers or get more advantage cards, or achieve specific quest goals. You're trying to complete at least one of your two quests to give you a bonus to your combat or speed, and then go for the final quest to try and win the game. Um, Characters will have combat and speed, but they'll also have access to key, trickery, and magic, which affect advantage cards that you can use to your advantage. And then combat uses dice. What I like about the game is just this kind of spirit of adventure, and there's a lot of flavor to it. It is a bit random. It can be difficult sometimes. Uh, on one hand, it takes things a little bit more seriously than Munchkin. On the other hand, you have a little bit more choice in this game. I have one of the expansions of Beyond Good and Evil. The one thing I don't have for the game is Twilight of the Odds, and I wish I could find it. I also wish I had the actual revised version of this game because then I could put everything into clear card sleeves instead of having opaque ones. Because they they did their initial run with the first set was black border. And then for the expansion and then the revised edition, white border. And whenever you change the color border for cards, it makes sleeving them important, especially sleeving them in opaque sleeves. But yeah, I really like the art style. Um, I really like the flavor of the world and everything. Fair warning, this is not a game for younger players because of certain art in the game. Yeah, especially the second expansion or the set the Beyond Good and Evil set. Yeah. Anyway, or Android Universe fun with mainframe. You'll have your character. They have access to some unique program cards. Uh, their access points, and you'll be using programs to add partitions or burn them off the top of the deck and place your access points. You're trying to partition off areas with only your access points to secure them and score them for that many points, based on the size of the area multiplied by the number of your access points. As long as multiple players are in a cordoned off area, nobody's getting the points for it until someone gets pushed out. It's an interesting game strategy in trying to figure out how to make the most of the programs that are available and also maybe coordinate with your own set of programs to pull some really sneaky stuff. There is a specific super combo in the game that makes it that extends out the length of the game extraordinarily further than it would be normally because the game ends when the deck of neutral programs runs out and all the other players will get one last turn. But certain players have access to certain programs that can put cards back into the deck. Um, I think the combo is you make someone play a certain card, and you have to hope that's the card that they have is the one that adds cards back into the deck, and then they actually end up playing that card, and then you have someone who copies that card. Yeah. Even with that, the game still goes fairly quickly. You can try out different things by playing different characters. Apparently, this is a reskin version of a game called Bauhaus, which is all about building big areas and getting points off of that. But I like the Android, theming and feeling like, okay, we're hacking into this mainframe. So it's just a fun, quick little game. All right. Next game is Cascadia. You have a little bit of terrain to work with, and then every turn you're taking a little terrain tile and animals and placing new terrain to extend out what you have. Try to build big areas of one kind of terrain. Placing your animals in a way where whatever scorecards you're using for those animals, you're making the most of that. And then players will go around just doing that until each player has had the opportunity to effectively get 20 animals. It's entirely possible to end up with an animal you can't place, which means you'll have one less animal to score. But you can also get pine cones to like take different um, animals and terrain. Because you have to pick like one column of animal plus terrain. The pine cones can also be used to mess with clearing animals out, or yeah, I think just animals, and swapping them out with new ones. Or you can hold them to the end of the game and they're worth points. But ultimately, you're trying to match the animal scoring cards and build big tracts of terrain like water or mountains or forests. It also has a solo mode where you play with certain animal scoring cards and other restrictions, and you're trying to reach a certain amount of points. That's something I love. I love being able to play a game solo and have that kind of challenge aspect of trying to solve a puzzle. But at the same time, there's also this bit of randomness in the terrain and the animals. So you kind of have to think on the fly of, am I gonna see any of this animal later and be able to score them for those points? This is just a nice game of, nature. And sometimes it's just a fun experience to and relax with as well. Um, again, I need to have a fifth player. I think there's an expansion for the game that might add a fifth player. I'm not sure, but I'm going to look for it and hope for the best. But yeah, this is set up in like Washington State in terms of you know the Cascade region. So I get this kind of nostalgic feeling of I kind of miss living up in Washington State. So having a kind of board game to remind me of it is nice. All right. I'm going to be taking a slight break. Sadly, I cannot pause the stream, so I will be right back. All right. I'm back with more soda. So we go on to the next game here in a sec. And all right, go to one of my other personal favorites of Infamy, because yay, Cyberpunk. You're a freelancer You're bidding on contacts to get resources or other cards to your advantage, or reputation, or infamy, or other special abilities. You have a limited number of tokens to bid with each turn, each day. They have to last you through the day and the night for bidding. You might hold back on bidding during the day and then bid on stuff at night, and then get your tokens back um, before the next day. But after you bid on contacts, you'll secretly assign to certain areas to potentially uh, go after certain missions, get certain resources, link up with one of the three factions to get reputation if you don't have any, or a card uh, to play to your advantage. And you complete missions, and they provide you with reputation with a faction, potentially, and infamy, which is just your general reputation with um, the Ares colony. And you're either trying to get to 15 infamy or 5 reputation. If you can do both, that is probably a definitive victory. But if you can do either one, it'll trigger the end of the game, and whoever's um, whoever's got that is gonna win. What I like is just the overall flavor of there's this, you know, outer world, um, colony, and you're trying to make a name for yourself by dealing with these factions, dealing with contacts, completing missions by acquiring resources and such. And the auction system is really challenging because you have to give up a token to even make a bid in the first place, and it's possible you get into a bidding war with someone, you're gonna run out of tokens hard. It's it's an interesting challenge. It's also not too long of a game. I love Cyberpunk. I love this kind of entrepreneurial spirit of, you know, achieving things by initiative of, setting your sights on a goal and getting it done. Yeah. So, Infamy, if you find a copy and you like Cyberpunk, get it. All right. Next game. I'm still looking forward to putting everything back on my shelves before I go to bed. Yeah. Civilization: A New Dawn, or Sid Meier's Civ. Funny, the only one I don't have is the Civ 3 game. Anyway, you have your focus bar and cards. Your civilization determines what cards start in what position of the focus bar. As you take an action, it'll go back to the starting point of the focus bar, and everything else will move uh, down the bar to a higher level. The longer you wait to do something, the better you can do it. You're going to be building cities, placing tokens around them to make them mature, which will give you goods and other stuff that matters for objectives. Uh, Instead of sending out units to fight, you will um, determine a place within your range of your city and attack that. Um, you'll gain technology points and improve your action cards to level 2 or 3 or 4. You don't have to progressively build something. You can like potentially take a level 1 card to level 4 when you reach that point. But there'll be 3 agendas at the start of the game with its like option A and option B. And if you complete one of the 2 options, you put your token on that card. And if you put a token on all 3 cards, you win. This is one of the critical. You need to have the expansion for this games. The only reason I bother to pick up this game again is for the Terra Incognita expansion. It adds actual army units that you have to move to make attacks. It adds governments. It adds another spot to the focus bar to affect what kind of government you end up with, potentially. Um, there's other stuff to do. New wonders, new civilizations to work with, new map tiles. I like the modular maps system for this game. It's this cluster of hexagons that proves it's possible to do this modular cluster of hexagons idea, and it actually makes it work. And also, this is a game that can be played in a comparatively faster amount of time than one of the other Civ games. At first there was this kind of a backlash to how streamlined the game was. It almost felt like really dumbed down. Like this isn't the Civ that I remember. But they added Terra Incognita, and they did such a great job with it that I can recommend this game. And I plan to hold on to this game. So yeah, I just need to actually play it. Oh yeah, I also have the fifth player too, because there's one recurring thing about the Sid Meier's Civ games that they come up with games. It's making sure there's a fifth player. All right. Quick little drink, and then on to the next game. Oh, yeah. Also had to move it into a different box. War chest. A chess-like game of um, getting access to certain ships, putting them into a bag, and hoping you draw the ones you need to make your moves. Try to take control of certain spots to win the game. Yeah, these little um, poker chip looking things. You'll have your bags to put them into, and you'll draw three at the start of the round, and use them towards um, taking over spaces, fighting your opponents. You'll have access to um, a specific unit that your opponent won't. So there's so there's all that option of um, figuring out what units you end up playing with. I think there's like rules for drafting. There's rules for two players, two teams of two players. There's there are historical scenarios, which I think is interesting. I like to see like an actual collection of historical scenarios, not just um, whatever's the current expansion. The expansion had stuff like fortifications and other declarations and other stuff. It's an interesting game, and I want to play it with more people. Because again, it's one I like picking up interesting games, but then I never really get to play them, and I really want to um play them more often. Connection okay? Looks like I had no delay there for a sec. All right. Next game. Small World. Game for up to 5 players. You'll have your race and your power that you pull from a group that's like flipped up at the start. Um, Depending on how far down the combination is, you might have to give up your uh, coins to get it. But then you'll be able to take them out into the field and go conquer the lands and um, make points based on how many spaces you occupy. They might they might have certain abilities that get more points as well, so it's good to make use of that. But ultimately, you'll come to blows with other players, and eventually you'll reach a point where, as you take losses, you lose things permanently. At some point, you're going to have to put your empire into decline and then start a new group on the next turn. You'll get points for your race in decline, but you'll also get points for your new group as well. So it's figuring out what to coordinate together and make use of. This is based on a game um, called Vinci. It's even the same designer too, but sadly, Vinci is out of print. I know some people like that game more, but maybe if they reprinted Vinci, there'd be a greater appreciation for it now. Because right now we've got Small World. Uh, there's a variation on this game called Small World of Warcraft that uses the Warcraft races and features legendary items. But one of the things I liked about that one was the modular map system. You have this random map tiles and that you'd get based on the number of players, and that just made a whole lot more sense to me. So um, it's just something to check out. Small World is fairly quick and not too hard of a game. It's fun. All right. Next game, Black Box, two-player game of hide and seek. You'll have one person putting so they will write down on a grid a number of dots that you'll be trying to find. Uh, you'll be like point to a number and they'll respond with either, another number saying it got deflected over here, or they'll say, oh, it got bounced back because it, hit the corners, two corners or more, and just bounced back into the starting spot. Um, or you might directly hit something. And you're trying to figure out where those things are with as few guesses as necessary, because every wrong guess will cost you. And then you will switch sides, and after trying to find them, you'll be the ones hiding them, and your opponent will not have to find them. And the player that did better wins. There are solo challenges to take up, and there'll be like a par value. You want to try to beat that. You'll want to try to beat that value. Um, I like the solo puzzle option. I think it's cool. I picked up this game because I was nostalgic about being a little brother in the Big Brother program back in Washington State. Um, my second big brother uh, is like really into board games, really into rock climbing, and he had also like polishing rocks. Really liked nature. Also had a pilot license. He's a really cool guy. I miss him. He's cool. Um, but yeah, this is one of the games we played, and I just saw it and I was like, okay, I'm nostalgic enough. I'm gonna pick it up. So Black Box. This is easily a game done in digital as well. There are probably there's probably a number of digital versions for this game. So check it out. It's fun. All right, next game is yeah, Hiroshima Hex. You have your faction. Your faction provides you with tiles. Every turn you will draw tiles at random, and you'll have to discard one of them. You can hold on to or place the other two. Units will go onto the field. Actions will do their thing, and then they're discarded. When the field is filled up with units, there's an automatic battle. Alternatively, you can play as an action a tile that shows the battle action and start the battle anyway. Starting with the highest initiative. The highest initiative units will strike, whether in ranged or melee. They will inflict their damage. And units with more damage than they can take are removed. And then the next initiative goes all the way down to 0. Bases are at 0. They do melee damage to everything around them. Um, Units might have armor to protect against range. They might have nets to shut other units down. You might have modules that improve certain units' abilities. But ultimately, it's just a game of absolute fucking chaos, and I love it. Um, I want to know more about this setting. I want to find this RPG in English, because right now, all I have is the board game. They've done some somewhat recent reprints of it as well. Yeah, there's this game, there's Babel 13, there's Duel. I'm trying to find, I'm trying to figure out if the Neuroshima Hex Duel was the start of the Duel kind of revolution of let's take this game and make it specifically two-player. Because I noticed, um, there's been a lot of games that are like, oh, hey, here's Splendor Duel, here's Seven Wonders Duel, here's Catan Duel. But I remember Neuroshima Hex Duel, and I'm thinking, was there any game that focused on taking a game normally for more players and like focusing on two players and calling it Duel? You know, if there's anything earlier than that, let me know. But yeah, just there's so many factions, so many different ways you could um end up with a lot of hard decisions to make with what you discard because you have to discard one. Um, and then there's Doomsday Machine. Uh, if you don't have Doomsday Machine, uh, I believe either Z-Man or Portal or someone has for free uh, the rules and the tiles for Doomsday Machine. But I think it's using one of the more recent uh, printings, the way those look. Uh, uh Having video problems? Anyway, Doomsday Machine is not tournament legal, but it is a challenge if you're looking for a challenge to take up. Babel 13 adds special scenario stuff that I think is worth checking out too. Yeah, it's just really tiny space, whole lot of fighting up close. It's fun. It's fun. It's wild. I love it. All right. Next game. Speaking of wild and fun games of messing with other players that I like, Citadels. We'll drink. All right. It's for up to 8 players. You can have a different set of roles and a different set of unique buildings. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is pick a role. When your turn comes up, use your role's ability, get more cards or more money, and then build your districts to build your citadel, your city. And once you reach a certain number of cards, it triggers the end game, and you get points based on the cost of each district. And if you were the first to complete your city, you get points. If you complete your city in the same turn as the player that completed their city, you get not as many points, but it's better than nothing. If you have all 5 colors of districts, you get a bonus, and certain unique districts will be worth points at the end. Um, this is a game that you either love or you hate. You either love it for how wild it is, or you hate the assassin. And I don't blame you for hating the assassin. It is a pain in the butt. But I think it's just a great game. There's so many possibilities. It's fairly quick. You can play multiple, sessions. You can design your own scenarios of roles and districts because there's 30 different unique districts, if I remember correctly, and you're playing with 14 of them. And then there's 9 different. There's 27 different roles at value 1 through 9 of turn order. The game is cool enough to include several preset options, including the introductory game, which is awesome. I'm glad when games give you these options to work with, but also give you ideas of what you can play with that have a certain theme going for them and maybe inspire you to create your own ideas with that in mind. But yeah, Citadels, it is a classic. I love it. Even when everyone else hates it in our gaming group. But seriously, there's like one person that absolutely refuses to play the game at all, and I don't blame them. But still, I love the game anyway. Splendor. Just a quick little game of gathering gems and buying cards with them and maybe attracting nobles and getting enough points to trigger the end game and having the most points to win. The expansion to the game adds a lot of options, but they are mutually exclusive. Cities of Splendor. You have cities where instead of attracting nobles, you're trying to achieve a certain city goal. Um, the trade route, uh, if you have certain cards, certain gems, you'll get access to certain abilities. The Orient, which has in the war cards for level 1, 2, and 3 as their own set and offers like weird effects, including potentially losing cards, which is interesting. And then there's strongholds, where you can potentially reserve cards to keep other players from taking them, or build up enough strongholds on one card to just get it. Splendor is just a quick little game, and it's simple. It's a good family game, and I just want to play it more often. We play a lot more complex strategic games, but this one's still good. Really, the only like random stuff is the cards, but there's still, you know, you get to see like 4 cards from each level to choose from, so you can strategize a little bit. But yeah, it's such a good game. It's a bit on the expensive side though. Next game is Dune, the classic game of you have your faction, you have your little soldiers, you have spice to go out and gather, but there's also the risk of the storm just wiping the soldiers and spice away. Um, there's an opportunity to mess with your other players through battle or bidding on certain cards. Um, there's betrayal because you'll be trying when you're in battle. You'll be risking a certain amount of your armies. You want to risk more than your opponent, but if you risk too many, your defenses are too low to handle getting attacked by a third party um, immediately after. Uh, you'll use leaders to improve your power in battle, but if your opponent has a traitor card for that leader, they can instantly win. There's cards like lasers and shields, or poison and detectors that can kill leaders or protect them. There's every faction does its own little weird things. Some of them have certain goals, like the Bene Gesserit are trying to predict uh, who's going to win by what turn, and they're going to try to actually help them win because then they can usurp the victory. The Fremen are trying to hold the line and hold certain areas. The Spacing Guild just wants conflict continue, period. But in general, just holding certain strongholds is how you win. You can try to work with other players by forming alliances, but then it requires more strongholds, I think. Yeah, classic game of unique factions, um, potential things going weird or horribly wrong. It's just cool. It's just a good game based on a book. And when it comes to good games based on a book, this is one of the two I recommend, along with Game of Thrones. Sadly, I don't have Game of Thrones anymore, but um, considering how well that short's been received, I might have to find a copy again. Yeah. Right, next game. Let's see here. All the games that I have in plastic storage boxes are at the bottom, and also kind of heavy. We have, not in the original box anymore, Descent, Journeys in the Dark. First edition. Because I like the editions of these games where I can actually be in control of the minions instead of trusting it's some map. But you'll have, you know, your characters with their stats and all that. My favorite guy, Veracon Dead. You have your character, their stats of health and stamina and armor and movement. There are bonus dice for certain attacks or abilities. There are special, their starting skills, which provide anything from like bonus movement to rerolling attacks or whatever. Uh, if the Overlord defeats them, they score that many points and potentially can win the game. If they're if the Overlord defeats enough heroes, the heroes lose. There's there are enemies to fight. There's treasure to gain. There's skills to learn. There's a whole book of scenarios to play through and build up your characters. And this game had a bunch of expansions, and I had this game with all the expansions, and I freaking sold it like an idiot because I'm always buying and selling games, and I want to get to a point where I'm selling less and just stick to my collection as much as I can. But which I gotta find where all the plastic monsters, because some of them have to be assembled from like multiple pieces. Everyone's favorite, Elite Dragon. because what's a game about dungeons without a dragon? Yeah, Descent is just pure fun. You kind of have to get used to the rules of uh, the orders and everything else, the status effects. But overall, it's just such a wild adventure of a game. I love it. Uh, they did a recent version of this game with an app, and I'm like, oh, uh, I whenever I see a game requiring an app, I'm just like, is there no way to do this with like a card-based system? You know, Gears of War used card-based system for its AI, and it did well. And it was a pretty good board game. You know, yeah, this is definitely one, and I want to make like a monthly thing out of running this game. If I could get a group together, yeah. Also like to find the expansions, but like many things, Fantasy Flight expansions are going to be hard to find because they're going to be expensive. At the very least, if I could only get one expansion for the game, I want it to be um, Road to Legend or whatever. So you can actually have this ongoing campaign of actually building up characters, um, and this whole adventure that's actually significant. Speaking of Terranoth, might as well get to it. Runebound, a fantasy adventure board game for 2 to 6 players, a little bit more competitive. You'll have your character. You'll have this great big world to explore. You'll have enemies to fight, dice rolls to make, money to earn, experience to spend, um, items to improve your character, allies to help, actually deal damage in other stages of combat or take the hits for you. And ultimately, the main quest of the game is defeat the High Dragon Lord, um, Margath, I believe, or get 3 of the Dragon Runes to win the game. This is just such an epic adventure, and there's a lot that can happen with encounters and events and everything else. It's definitely a game for an evening, a long evening, but I enjoy just the spirit of the adventure, and there's an opportunity to try a different character. You never know what items are going to show up in the market. You never know how your dice roll is going to turn out for moving across the terrain. It's it's fun. I love Runebound. This very specifically is the second edition, which drops the D20 for 2D10, which I understand. What annoys the hell out of me though is the terrain dice use stickers instead of the engraving. I miss the engraved dice from first edition, but I don't miss the cardboard stands from first edition. I like the plastic figures it comes with. Um, I think this was coming right out after Descent first edition because the plastic figures are the same for the characters in Descent as they are for the characters in Rebound. But this is another one with a ton of expansions. Most of them are just cards, which are easy to deal with, but others are a little bit harder to find because they added new stuff like the sea, um, the little island hopping fun of that one. I have a checklist for the expansions, and I'm missing quite a bit. I would like to find more for that game. All right. Oh, well, no, let's just get these out of the way because just might as well. All the two-player classics. Chess, all its pieces. Backgammon. The one thing I want to know for this game is how people remember where all the pieces start without any reference. Shogi, with all the neat little pieces. This is the kind of dummy version of we're going to print all this stuff on the tile for you. So if you're new to there's an opportunity to learn it. Like, a lot of crap. Could take the time to pack it better. And my personal favorite out of them, Go. Just the full board, stones. Yeah, classic games of strategy. And of course, backgammon has a little bit of luck too. Go just fairly simple games ranging from a little bit of time to an evening, maybe even a day. If you're the kind of the player likes to spend a lot of time thinking about moves and all that, you know, games of great historical importance that are still fun even now. Chess, backgammon, shogi, and Go. Classics, I do recommend. Oh, yeah. Got next game, Isaribi. You have your boat that you take out to various fishing areas and pick up clams, prawns, uh, tuna, or and sea bream. I forget what the blue one was. Let me see here. Remembers. Yeah. But yeah, you'll gather the seafood. You'll come back and you'll try to sell it to the best price available in the market to make the money to improve your ship. But ultimately, you want to have the most money at the end to win. Um, there's going to be more supply than demand. And if you ever have too much fish left over at the end of a round, you'll have to discard most of it and you'll lose money uh, because of that. Very much a cutthroat business game of fish and fishing and marketing. But you can improve your ship and that might help. You can have access to a smokehouse to or seafood. You can have your own personal client that will spend $4 and buy anything, but they will only buy one thing. So it gives you an option to work with if the options in the market are crap. There's a bit of randomness in the way the seafood area works out and the way the market area works out, but ultimately it's mainly a strategy game. So this one's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. I love it though, precisely because of how challenging it can be. Yeah. Isaribi. More soda. Oy. All right. The next game. Urbania, a game of drawing cards, using them to bring new life into certain districts, and then um, using coins to invest in advisors that will give you points based on how many of those districts have been restored. There's getting project cards and you know putting them down early, so they cost you as few points as necessary. But then you have to put in the work to actually make them pay off. If you wait until you're certain that they're going to pay off, it's entirely possible that you'll lose too many points from doing that way. Because when you put down a scoring card that you intend to score at the end of the game, you lose 1 point for every 10 that you already have. So you either play it early and work like hell to get it done, or you play it late when you've already guaranteed it, but you lose points in the process. It's it's an interesting approach, but overall, I just like that it's not too hard of a game. It's just play cards and do stuff, or get more cards. You've got a couple actions each turn to figure out you know, what you're gonna do, and then get it done. The advisor system of you pay for the advisor, and then the cost for that advisor goes up. So if someone wants to buy that advisor while you still have it, they have to pay a little bit more. Another interesting thing is certain cards have both hard hats, which restore districts, and coins. When you spend a card that has the hard hat and the coin for the hard hat, you put the card in front of you as the coin, and then you can use the coins towards the advisor. It's there's kind of a clear timer that might be a bit variable. Um, when certain, at least two districts are down to um, only like a couple of unrestored um, buildings, they finish out the round and then take one more round. So you have a decent amount of time to work with to get final things figured out. But you can see how close the game is to ending by looking at how, what condition is Baron and your four leading knights and their personal armies. And uh-oh, connection went out. Connection? No. OBS, hang in there. OBS. Okay, I'm sorry if anything cut off for Urbania. Uh, see OBS finally reconnected. Anyway, um, yeah, you'll have your Baron, your knights, their armies. You will buy um, mercenary armies to add to yours. You'll tax your cities to get the money to maintain your mercenaries. You'll you'll have to play actions into these piles, and each pile will be shuffled, so you'll have a choice of which actions you're putting into which pile, but not the order of that specific pile. So you might be setting things up to do this like early, and you'll be able to do it early, but someone else might be able to do the thing that actually, messes up your plan. So There's that. It's possible to have random events like expeditions, um, bad things happening, good things happening, um, political uh, craziness. Players can be given offices. They'll have votes to vote for other players themselves to hold office or to lose an office or get a specific army or just other things. There's there's a lot of possibility in this game. The combat system's interesting. This is a game that the combat system inspired the combat system for one of the games I've been working on just a little bit. The deal casualties, prevent casualties, victory system. It's like, okay, yeah, this actually makes sense. I'm gonna use this to a degree. Yeah, there's a lot that can happen in this game. Um, you can decide how many points you want to play to because, and yeah, I think the game kind of, if you're playing at the regular points value, it ends before it gets really interesting. But it also, playing more points means the game is a little bit longer. But this is the fun experience I grew up with early in playing games here in Pueblo. Warrior Knights, just a classic game. I I wish they'd bring it back. So I don't have to pay stupid amounts of money for the for not a print copy. Speaking of stupid amounts of money for out of print copies, we have Warcraft, the board game. Um, you play as one of four factions. Um, you might also be playing, as a team as well. Team of two versus a team of two. Um, humans and night elves versus orcs and undead. And you're trying to um, go capture these areas that are worth points. Hold on to these areas that have resources to uh, mine with your workers, buy new units, improve your units, build more buildings to build more units, um, use cards in battle or for other effects. This is like my first experience with holy crap, I need the expansion of this game. The expansion of the Throne. I think it's just called the expansion, the Warcraft expansion. Uh, OBS, hang in there. OBS, really? All right. Anyway, um, the expansion added heroes, and heroes make all the freaking difference in this game. Um, they also add creeps for heroes to fight and get the experience. They revamped the whole card system so that cards are providing the energy that your heroes need to do their special stuff and be more useful in battle. Um, they add more scenarios. There's already a few scenarios to work with for the base game. The expansion adds some more. They also add more faction-specific abilities. Normally, with the base game, it was just the cards that really separated the factions. But the faction-specific abilities really differentiate the factions a little bit further, and that with the heroes, with the new cards, it just makes all the difference in making every faction like really unique. Yeah. This is one of the first board games I ever bought for me as my journey into tabletop game appreciation. Speaking of Blizzard, another one I no longer have the original box for. StarCraft, the board game. Where you'll have your faction, you'll have your deck of combat cards, a deck of technology cards to research, little plastic units to build buildings to expand what units you can build, workers to get resources, um, tokens to place onto planets to determine what you're going to do there. Either move, build, research. Of course, it's entirely possible to get screwed out of actions by having someone else place their token on top of yours. At which point you will get an event card. And during the event resolution phase, you will choose one of your event cards and resolve it. Combat in the game is done with cards. For every non-support unit you have, you will have a front. Your opponent will have a front as well. Any leftover units will go to support the units that are in front, providing extra attack or the ability for you to use your support technology cards that you research and are in your hand. When you actually play a card for a front, you can play one actual battle card and then one support card or reinforcement. You'll have attack and defense values. If it's the actual unit, you'll use the better attack and defense values. If not, you'll use the lesser ones. Although sometimes the lesser ones are the ones you want to use for certain units with certain cards. If you have a reinforcement card, it'll do its thing if you've got the unit there in support or on, or even up front if it's stuck being up front. And if your attack beats their defense, you eliminate them. If their attack beats your defense, they eliminate you. If even one defender survives, the attacker has to retreat. Unless the defender is down to support units, in which case they have to retreat. You're ultimately trying to control these victory point areas, and you'll score those on at the end of the round. And the 15-point mark wins. You can play to more points as well. You can also try to capture areas that have more minerals and more gas to expand your resources, but you'll need to build more workers to make use of them. There's other considerations like certain units are flying, so you're going to need units that can go anti-air to take them down, or else your whatever your attack value is isn't going to matter. I've bought and sold this game quite a bit. I'm never selling because holy crap, was it stupidly expensive. Especially the Brood War expansion. Brood War was stupidly expensive. But this is still a great game because the strategy and also I like StarCraft in general. This game has they've tried to supplant this game with Forbidden Stars, and I just for all my fondness for 40K, I would rather have Starcraft. Unfortunately, most people beg to differ. They would rather have the 40K game of Forbidden Stars. For what it's worth, that game's map takes up less space, and the figures look really nice, but I still just can't get past the whole cards and dice combat thing, which might seem hypocritical considering the next game I'm featuring is City of Remnants, a very militant cyberpunk kind of game, which is what I like. Um, you have your gang. Your gang is represented with figures and represented with cards. You are moving your gang into the city of Gatorum and trying to hold areas so you can build buildings there and hold on to those buildings for their effects, for their renown. You might send your gang members to go fight other gang members, at which point combat's done with playing cards based on your influence and rolling dice based on your figures. If you can win the battle, you can take control of the space. Um, the spaces people are going to end up fighting over the most are the ones in the center. It's worth the most renown. And where you can build the higher cost buildings that do some really cool stuff. Every turn you may have to deal with the YCUs that are just out to shut down all the games. You have one safe spot on the board, and that's your starting space for where your gang members can enter. But if you come into contact with the YCUs, you're gonna have to fight them or bribe them with money. If you bribe them with money, they go away. If you fight them, there's a possibility of you might lose renown, you might have to spend money anyway, or you might gain renown. Who knows? Some buildings can generate products which you can then sell for money. Other buildings can provide combat bonuses or other interesting stuff. The replayability of the game is you can end up with different buildings each time. You can end up with a different gang. Different black market cards can show up. Different recruitments can show up to add to your gang. You can hit certain milestones to improve your influence. Influence is this number that starts at 4, and as it goes up, it expands your ability to do certain things like selling products or playing more cards in battle. There's quite a bit to this game. It can feel kind of overwhelming at times, but I still love this game. I was very happy to get it back after making the dumbass mistake of selling it. So, there's been a re-implementation of this game that apparently some people like, other people are like, they this one. But I really have a soft spot for this game. This is another game that I got at a weird turning point in my life, which was coming back to Pueblo from Port Angeles. So, City of Remnants, it's it's an odd game, but I like it. Like, all right, next game is Cipher. Speaking of Port Angeles, one of the games I got was there. I ended up selling and then I decided to go looking for it again. So every turn you'll be playing a card from your hand. You'll draw a card. You'll pass one card to the player to your left and another card to the player to your right, and then discard down to one card. You are trying to have the most points worth of cards in play at the end of the game. The end of the game can be triggered by the Cipher anomaly and triggered other ways as well. But ultimately, once the game end is triggered and reached, um, either if the draw deck is empty or someone's played a Cipher anomaly, um, all players get one last turn, and the most points, the most influence points will win. In case of a tie, the tiebreaker is, the tie player's closest in clockwise order to the player that triggered the game. And the end of the game. Holy crap. One of the things you can do with this game is play multiple games of it, and like whoever wins the most, whoever wins a certain number of games wins the overall session. I just like the art style, and again, I love cyberpunk, so cyberpunk anything. Yeah, it's a very compact card game. Oh, so if you're looking for something portable and cyberpunk and quick, this is one to go with. There are some kind of broken combos with like middlemen and everything else. Does it? Oh yeah. Syndicate Chief. Well, Syndicate Chief is in play area with lower class cards. Its value is increased by 3 to a maximum of 6. If you can get both Syndicate Chiefs and a lower class card, that's like instant victory. Definite victory. Yeah, sector. It normally comes in a bag, and then sadly I had to buy it used, and there's no bag for it anymore. But I'm just happy to have the game again. Acquire, it has been reprinted like so many times by now, but this is one of the older versions. You'll have your starting money, you'll have your hand of tiles, you'll play a tile and maybe start a hotel chain, and then buy stocks of the open hotel chains. At some point, hotel chains will merge. The bigger one will eat up the little one, and the little one pays out to, whoever's got the most stocks will get a big bonus, second most, um, second biggest bonus. And you'll have a chance to put your stocks into the new company or sell them straight out. The trade in for stocks into old into new is 2 to 1. It's entirely possible that the stocks will run out, so might end up stuck with money. But in general, you want to try to invest into the new company early on before it gets too big and the stocks get super expensive. The game will end when one chain is at 41 or more tiles, or all the chains in play are safe. A chain a chain is safe when it's at 11 tiles or more. Chains that are safe cannot be merged. Um, cannot be consumed by a merger. They can still eat up smaller companies. One strategy in the game is to um, get a little chain going and then have that get merged and then hold on to the stocks of the little chain and then start up that chain again somewhere else. And you've already got the stocks, so you're already in a good position. Um, it can also backfire if that chain getting consumed means um, all the remaining chains in play are safe. I've had it backfire on me before, playing against a couple of other family members. Yeah, Acquire, classic game, fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Um, it's just a bit of math, and it's not even the hard math. So again, they've reprinted it recently. I always recommend this game. Pick it up, play it, have fun. There was There was a version where they tried to switch out the hotel chains with like weird other businesses. I'm not sure what they were, and the the grid was now 10 by 10 instead of 9 by 12, and that grid was it also suffered from the Ventura problem of because the numbers weren't painted, it was kind of hard to see them, so I kind of had to go out of my way to actually paint those numbers to make them visible. But I think with the recent reprint, they actually got it together and hopefully um, didn't make that same mistake again. All right. Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes I kind of want to point out on some stuff, like megacorps. Megacorps. You have your megacorp. You buy companies and industries. You own countries. If you own a country where someone is looking to buy into an industry where they're in somewhere else, you can tell them no. You can buy mercenaries. You can send them to fight other countries and take them over and take out someone's business through government action. You can use government action to kick someone out of your nation. Um, you start the round, you get a card that gives you some kind of bonus if I find useful, um, like opening up uh, biotech as a way to get mercenaries, or making everyone pay for their mercenaries, or opening up the asteroid or L5 business, or making certain industries pay out because normally you can only pay out if no one else has paid out that round, and if you weren't the last person to do a payout action. When a business pays out, it pays out based on the number of people in that industry. The fewer the people, the higher the payout. And the payout is per business. Or per, yeah. So if you own three parts of an industry, then you're getting paid three times. Ultimately, you're trying to end the game with the most money. All the industries will pay out one last time at the end. Um, the combat system, just straight up numbers of mercenaries versus mercenaries and defense. You might have force if you own a country. Combine all the countries you own, their force, plus your mercenaries against the defending country and all their mercenaries. Players can intervene in, you know, providing mercenaries or selling them to other players. It's kind of tongue in cheek in a way. Um, Fun fact: the main designer for the game, Greg Costikian, uh, also the same designer behind Paranoia. Make of that what you will. But yeah, I just like the game. It's kind of a fairly it's kind of hard to say straightforward so often, but there's not a whole lot of super complex stuff with the game. I might just have to write down the government intervention stuff, but even that kind of feels a little intuitive when you think about it. Of course, a dictatorship is going to nationalize a company. Of course, a kleptocracy is just going to take it over. A, a democracy kicking someone out but also paying them for it. Yeah. My one complaint with the game is a lack of paper money. One of the things you do not fuck up in game design is you do not fail to provide enough stuff that needs to be provided. For a six-player game, this does not come with enough paper money. Similar games that have this issue. Um, City of Remnants does not come with enough single points of renown, which is why I had to include tokens for that game. Planet Steam does not come up with enough ones for a full 5-player game, which is why substitutes might be needed. If you're going to design a game, you provide enough stuff to accommodate the maximum number of players with a little bit of wiggle room. But for games like this, I end up using my own metal money set anyway. But even with that, I still like the game. Alright. The next game is Battle Cruisers. Just a neat little standalone card game of you have your battle cruiser, you have your cards. You randomly have one card that's used at the start and one that's discarded, face down. On your turn, you will secretly play a card. Everyone will also secretly play a card, and then everyone will flip it over. And then from lowest number to highest, you'll resolve the action on your card. If multiple players play the exact same card, instead, the clash effect happens. And the clash effect will be bad. You will probably have to discard cards. You might even lose points. Um, but if your regular effect can go off, you can maybe gain points or cause players to discard cards. You are trying to get to 15 points first. Failing that, you are trying to be the last player left in the game. It's entirely possible that you're down to a single card, at which point um, you go into red alert and you get the card back at the end of the turn if it's not, discarded. Uh, if you can find a way to get one of your other cards back, you can get out of red alert. But once you reach that point, you're in deep trouble. Um, this is another game that provides a wide variety of cards to make scenarios out of. It provides I want to say 21 unique scenarios of their own for players to try out. And it provides advice for making your own scenarios with the cards. Everyone is going to have the exact same set of cards for a given scenario. The more players, the more cards. So you'll have to make a note of this card gets added in with 4 players, this gets added in with 5. But it is just a fast game. And you can play a ton of games in a session and maybe have a campaign out of it. The only rough part about the game is uh, the red text on a black background is hard to read. Which is why I found little reference sheets online. Thank you, Board Game Geek, for hosting those reference sheets and printing them out so that if people are struggling to read the cards, they can read the reference sheet. Yeah, Battle Cruisers, just a nice little game. All right, next, we'll talk about cards and scenarios. Let's get to Heart of Crown from Depending Games. If you played Dominion, it's going to feel familiar, but it's going to do its own thing as well. You'll have um, your cards. If they have, you will play one card, and then if it has link arrows, you can play another card per link arrow. Once you're done playing cards, if you get money out of it, you can use it towards buying cards in the market. Um, you can use it to back a princess, or you can play cards to um, your domain once you've backed a princess to have the points to crown your princess and win the game. There's the market stack and various cards to buy, and they'll provide special actions, potentially money, potentially extra cards and you're trying to make efficient use of those cards every turn. Uh, to make money to buy stuff or mess with your opponents or get the support that you need um, once you've backed a princess to actually win the game. There, the main support cards and the cards that get you more money are always available. The the other cards are just kind of at random. Yeah, I like the art style for the game. Um, it's just an interesting approach to deck building, especially considering, Dominion is a classic. I respect it for its place in game history, but I just like the overall look of Heart of Crown and the backup princess approach, and also you can use the whatever money cards that you put into backing the princess towards holding certain cards from your hand for a future turn. So if you use like a big money card, that's like it provides like it costs like 6, uh, you can use that to hold a 5 value card or less for a future turn, which is an interesting strategy. Um, the expansions add more stuff, but they also add another princess each. With both expansions, there's a mode of play for the game where after you choose which princess to back as the next, queen, empress, whatever, you choose one of the other ones and make them unavailable for anyone else to back. So it starts limiting options that way. And each princess has her own abilities too. It's it's just a fun game. I've played it a few times. I want to play it more. Uh, it's also got quite a bit of weight to it because it's got all these cards, and I've had to save all of them. One of the things I try to keep in mind is like, if I gotta pick up a game, it's like how many card sleeves am I gonna need of like one kind? But yeah. This is brought over from Japanime games, notable for games like Tanto Kure and also Starlight Stage Pop Idol card game. One sec. Yeah, George. You'll have your starting talents with their starting skills. You'll use them to go into event cards to expand their skills. Potentially get achievements or talent tokens. You can then use the talent with achievements and talent tokens to uh, replace them with um, a reinvented version of themselves, which improves their skills. You can then all you can then use those reinvented idols to go after fame cards. Sometimes the starter idols are enough to go after like certain low level fame cards with talent tokens, but having a single idol that can just go after the cards is better. The fame cards will provide points, which are how you win the game. Reinventing an idol can make them worth more points as well. Certain fame cards, if you have certain achievement medals and or talent tokens, you can get points that way. Uh, there are scout cards that require you to assign an idol for a turn and um, use a couple achievements, and you'll get a fresh idol to add to your office, and they'll be able to go pursue events and reinvention fame. Why do I like this game? I mean, yeah, that basically sums it up right there. Yeah. Cute anime girls are a selling point. I cannot deny that. Not even for me. But it's also just kind of it's a fairly quick game of just you have your three idols every round, you use them to do stuff, and then everyone's done, and then starts the next round, and they can go do stuff again. It's a fairly positive, fairly happy kind of game instead of like actually dealing with the consequences and circumstances of real idols. You know, it's fun. Yeah, and it looks nice and all that stuff. So this was a game I picked up around the time that I was like starting to get curious about the whole idol concept. But it is a good game. Next one. Seven Wonders is a classic, more recent classic game. This one's a more recent reprinting. You will draft cards. You'll have your wonder that you're trying to build. You'll take cards to have access to resources that you can use towards um, building cards towards military strength, culture, um, businesses, science, eventually guilds, and at the end of the round, you'll compare military values to your neighbors and potentially get. Well, you can also work with your neighbors to buy their materials and build stuff um, you otherwise wouldn't be able to build without them. Building your wonder gets you points or other benefits, so it's worth working on your wonders. There's building the blue cards, which are just straight up points. The science cards, which are points on their own, but as you have certain combinations of science cards, you can get a ton of points that way. It's just multiple ways of getting points in the game, and there's not a whole lot of complexity to it. It's just fairly simple, quick fun. But there's still a good deal of strategy to it, and it's it's a classic for a reason. For that reason. There are expansions to it as well that I have yet to pick up, but I'm definitely thinking about it. Alchemist. Not Alchemist, Alchemist. Yeah. This is a game of developing recipes, copying recipes, getting points for it. But you're secretly trying to make a specific ingredient disappear. You want people to be spending it on recipes and getting rid of it. The thing is, whenever someone copies a recipe, they take one of the ingredients and give it to you. Leftover ingredients in behind your screen are worth points at the end, but you want to get the points from um, making people spend more of your school's specific ingredients than anyone else's. One of the other weird things about the game is you make the initial recipe, everyone else can copy it except you. If you make too many recipes, then the ones you're going to be copying might not be the ones that help you fulfill your goal. So keep that in mind. You also get to set how many points a recipe is worth. If you set it high, make sure it's getting rid of the ingredients you're trying to get rid of. You know, trying to set up the recipes in a way that'll encourage people to follow a certain path of copying one recipe and copying another is a strategy. The one thing I had to correct with this game is just the distribution by player for the way the ingredients work. The number of ingredients in the starting bag and what players might end up with. It's a nice game. The game was complete. Yeah. Next game also featured pretty recently is Rummy Cube. You have your rack of tiles. You're trying to make runs and sets and all that stuff. You can potentially build off other players' stuff. Ultimately, you're trying to empty your rack first. It is. It offers some options that you know make things a little bit easier to handle. I think of just one being able to play off of other people's sets, making use of jokers, and also just playing multiple games for a session, and then whoever does the best out of all that wins. But yeah, um, over 70 years, just a classic game. Yeah, I know my mom likes it. I haven't opened up this one in a while. I haven't even gotten to play it yet. Dwarf's Fall. You're trying to prepare for a coming winter. So you'll have to place your workers, upgrade them, use your tiles to build out your kingdom, set up walls to cordon off your kingdom from others. You get gems to put towards a market, which will get you even more points. Yeah, it's been a while, so I'm still a little bit fuzzy on this one. There's objectives to go after for points. There are monsters to deal with. Yeah, it's definitely a game I need to spend a little bit more time with and like remember. But I like dwarfs. I like the fantasy dwarfs of hard work and big treasure. Yeah, it doesn't seem too terribly complex, so recommend it. Yeah. Next game. Classic cooperative game of Pandemic. You'll have your role, you'll have your cards, you'll have your actions, you'll need to go to certain places, contain the disease, gather up the cards, get the cure, get all four cures to win before, the disease gets out of, one of the disease gets out of control. Either the deck of cards runs out, hit the eighth outbreak, or one of the disease cubes runs out. It's This is a game I play solo precisely because sometimes cooperating with other people is more trouble than it's worth. But I do respect it as, a good cooperative game. I've never messed with the legacy games for Pandemic though. So another one I haven't really messed with in a while, and it's Steam, Real Switches. You'll be building track, connecting cities, delivering goods. making money, improving your train. Yeah. I haven't really messed with this enough that it's still kind of fuzzy on how it goes, but yeah, just deliveries and making money. I've also got the Steam Barons expansion, which adds a stock market effect. I've also picked up the I've also picked up expansions for um, a board that uses 7 players, which I'll have to try out one of these days. For some reason, there's people I've shown this game to at the game store. They're like they'd rather play their 18xx stuff, and that's fine. But I want to play Steam, really do. All right, Revolution. Make your bid for power. You have your screen, you have your board, you have your resources of force, blackmail, and gold. Some things don't work on certain people. Like the people that provide force are obviously not going to bend to force. You're probably going to have to use blackmail. And the opposite for people who provide blackmail, they're not going to bend to that. They know they're dirt. They're not going to get hit by it. You're going to have to use force instead. And you're trying to put influence cubes out to get points at the end for having the most there. You're trying to get more resources to work with. Whatever you spend, you lose. There is a variant though where if you don't win the bid, you get your resources back, which I don't know if it makes things easier or harder. It's something that I want to explore, maybe in a board game league in the future. But it's not stupidly complex, so it's definitely one to try out, for an evening game. The expansions add more players. Regardless of which of the two expansions you get, you're stuck at 6 players maximum. At least you have more colors to choose from. Um, if you go with the palace, it opens up a watchtower or a watchman space for protecting you from certain abilities. If you go with anarchy, it opens up the asylum and prison, I think. Yeah, I've yet to experiment with that one. Yeah, just Revolution, fairly straightforward. I like it. Alright. And now to the top of the cabinet games. Basically, all my dead card games. Or at least the card games that are alive, but not really in this town. Dot hack enemy. You have your deck of cards of PCs to fight, equipment to use, actions to take, and monsters to deploy against your opponents. To fight a monster, you'll have to flip Destiny. It'll be like a random number, like 1 to 5, and add it to your power, and the higher power wins. If the monster gets through, you'll score the points. So when your monsters attack, your opponent has a decision to make: let all of them through or fight them. If they fight them and the monsters win, you only get to score one monster. And scoring 7 points is how you win. Yeah. Um, Not Hack Enemy is one of the foundational games of my teen years. I remember winning the T-shirt for the first tournament, and I wish I still had it as a reminder of that. But sadly, it got worn out. All the little printing got worn away. But it's still a good game. Got a couple starter decks. Have fun with it. This is not a collectible card game, but I'm putting it into a card box because it wasn't fitting in the main game box anymore. The Target, a party game of covert operations and trying to figure out who other players are. And trying to get intel to your headquarters of the same letters. So, like, you're trying to get the A intel, you need three A's to win. However, there are double agents that you're not going to know if they're on your side or not completely until the end of the game. If headquarters gets three dirty intel, the double agents win. Every turn, it'll someone will be the target because the target token will move to them. Every player will add a card um, face down to a pile in the center, which will be collected, shuffled, and then all the cards will be revealed. And that player will get those cards after resolving any attacks. So there'll be things like um, stuff from the espionage and operative decks to spy on or kill agents. And it will take certain rookie cards to counter those attacks. Otherwise, the agent is dead or is permanently under surveillance. But after that, if they survive, they'll get the cards that are remaining and potentially use like rookie cards to open up the options of espionage, operative, or intel decks, and have access to those decks until they're killed by an operative card, and then they'll discard down to four and it'll go to the next player, being the target, or potentially headquarters. When the headquarters is a target, that's when the intel cards you're gonna want to get played, or you're gonna want to protect the intel cards from getting destroyed. It's an interesting game. It's really, really low on BGG. One of the things I had to do for this game, other than sleeving the cards, um, was making replacement envelopes because those old envelopes were shit. They were see-through. Like you could tell if someone was a double agent by looking at it. So that's the one improvement I was willing to go out of my way to make for the game. Sadly, there's nothing I can do to fix the rules, so it is what it is. But it's Cold War, and I kind of have a soft spot for Cold War stuff. Um, so I'm halfway tempted to go get a physical copy of Twilight Struggle, but I'm also happy with the digital version of that game. Next, Eve the Second Genesis. See, I don't have a whole lot of original card boxes lying around for stuff. I actually have some of them pinned it to my wall as decoration. But you will have your deck of cards representing your market. You will have um, a little faction card that is actually on the other side a tower. Um, you can pay to upgrade to it during the game. Your opponent's not going to know what tower you have until you actually flip it over. But it'll have a certain amount of defense, certain amount of money, a certain amount of things you can add on to it, your little home region. You can have other regions to go after, increase your money, increase your capabilities. You'll have location cards to add to the regions to improve your abilities, improve your money making, make use of mining. News cards to do various things, um, various ships to work with. Classics like the Riptor or the Probe or the Thrasher to go do combat or go do other stuff. And ultimately, you're just trying to use your ships to control regions so you can make use of the money from them, and then ultimately send your ships to go fight other ships and ultimately attack someone's home region and try to knock them out of the game. Alternatively, if you run out of um, cards, you can lose the game that way. So careful not to burn through your market too quickly. But yeah, it's a good game. It really is. It's unfortunate I didn't really catch on too well. Of all the freaking card games, though, I am struggling to find booster packs for this one. I think I saw one. It was like the booster pack went for like 10 to 12 bucks or something. Like holy crap! Yeah, it's it's a good experience of feeling like you're at the head of a corporation and managing a war against others. Apparently, it's possible to play this game multiplayer. I have yet to see how well that works. One of the things I like about the game is you build up ISK. You build up the money. It doesn't disappear. You can accumulate it for multiple turns to buy something that you really want. But yeah, just this one of the two starter sets is enough to play the game and have fun with it. If you have both starter sets, that gives you quite a bit of options to work with in terms of combining ships from like multiple factions together. All right. Let's see what's that. One moment. All right. More card game fun with Life Shorts. You'll have your deck of cards with characters and events and climax cards. You'll be playing characters out onto the stage. In order to play a character's past level 1, you'll need to have the color in, um, or past level 0, you're going to need to have um, that many cards in your clock, or is it in the level? You'll have to have that many cards in your level. You'll have to have the color in your level or your clock, and then you'll have to have an open space to play them. You can use your characters to directly attack other characters and potentially knock them out. You can side attack characters as an effort to build up stock, or you can make a direct, just an unprotected attack against someone and just deal a ton of damage to somebody, depending on what card you flip. When you fight, you'll flip a card and you'll add that to your soul. Inflict that damage to your opponent. They will reveal cards one at a time when they're taking damage. If they reveal a climax card, it stops all the damage. Otherwise, it goes to their clock and potentially pushes them towards defeat. But every card, every time they get 7 cards in their clock, 1 card goes to level. When their level goes up, they have access to higher level cards. They can potentially turn it around. But it also means they're closer to defeat. So there's this counterbalancing aspect of, okay, I'm closer to defeat, but I have access to stronger stuff. I can maybe turn it around. It's not a guarantee, but it's something. You can also play climax cards to potentially increase your abilities, increase your damage for that round of attack. But the big selling point of Vice Shorts is all the franchises of anime characters you've ever wanted to play with as a card game. I only have Vice Shorts stuff for Hololive, as you can see from the insert sheets showing off the various characters that come with that starter deck. It's just fun to be able to have various franchises of characters working together and making for an entertaining show of, you know, this weird style of combat. I want to play this game more often with people because I think it's good. I've I've talked about it before how I wish there was like a kind of what I call the TV tropes version of Vice Schwartz where it's gets the kind of concepts of the game across using kind of a generic setting and characters that's, original design, do not steal, all that Bushiroad could come up with and market as an introductory set to the game. For someone who's not, if there's a franchise they really want to play with or not. It's just an idea. Probably won't, might not sell or not sell enough, who knows. But it's an idea. What's that? It's cards. Thanks. Legend of the Five Rings. You will have your stronghold. My connection okay? Your stronghold, your various provincial things to buy, more holdings, actions, various characters and equipment. You'll have your fate deck of rings and units and weapons and magic. You will send characters with units and equipment to go fight other armies at provinces and try to eliminate provinces militarily as one way of winning the game. You can try to build up your honor high enough to win the game with honor. You can try to bring your opponent's honor down to negative amounts until they're so dishonored they're just failed. And then there's getting out the 5 rings: fire, water, air, earth, and void. Getting out each ring requires certain conditions. If you can get out all 5 rings, you win the game. It is an absolute pain in the ass to pull it off, but it is entirely possible. And I think it's cool that the game has that as a way to win. Difficult, but awesome. I like it because it's fantasy Japan and all that, and a little soft spot for Japan, even if it's like kind of fantasy. But it's not just Japan; it's pulling from some other inspirations as well. But it's a classic card game, and it's unfortunate that it went to that living card game setup, and then that didn't really go over too well. The whole living card game system, if you're going to do a living card game and you're going to make a starter set, that starter set better have enough playable copies of every card so that one person is not buying multiple fucking starter sets and locking out other players from the game by doing so. You make a starter set, it has all the playable copies for for that set. Period. It's just such a stupid idea to only make like, okay, here's a starter set, but we're only providing one or two copies of this instead of the maximum. So if you want the full play set, you're going to need multiple starters, and that's stupid. It locks people out. It's so stupid. Anyway, enough of my whining. Uh, so sort out the mystery card boxes later. Dragoborn, a yet another dead collectible card game. In case it's been a while since you last seen the video where it's featured. What kind of match that's in with? You shitting me? Uh, trying to open up the field map here. You have your banners that provide your energy or mana or whatever. You have your forts represented by face down cards. You'll have dice. A collectible card game also using dice is kind of a bold move, but might also be just seen as a dumb move. You have a place for ambush cards. Yeah, you'll get energy, you'll summon creatures, you'll attack your opponents. You'll utilize dice to improve your creature strength or better defend your forts. And you're trying to break your opponent's forts until you break all of them. Each fort is made up of two face down cards, and then I believe as you destroy the forts, they'll go to the player's hand. Some cards, if that card is a destroyed fort card and it gets flipped up, then that player might be able to use it right away. In case you missed what some of the cards look like. There's your banners that provide your energy. Starting out with 3 mana right off the bat is something I approve of. Because when you just like have to start with one and then move to two and three, that's arduous as hell. So actually starting with 3 mana, well, the different colors you play with in your deck is pretty nice. And we got the various creature designs. I appreciate that they go with single freaking digits and not the, hundred, thousands, whatever. It's actually pretty reasonable. This, just the art itself is just pretty cool for this game. If anything, that's the one thing I'm happy for out of it. It's cards that just look nice. Yeah, you'll have certain cards that, depending on dice roll, what you roll for your dice will have certain effects. You can place dice on your creatures to make them a little bit stronger, or put them on your forts to protect them. It reminds me a lot of Duel Masters, which is appropriate because it's designed by um, the person behind that game. But I remember finding the cards at a thrift store, and it's like, what the hell is this game? I've never seen it before. I'm going to pick up the cards and look through them and see if I can try to intuit how the game works just by looking at it. Yeah, Vagabond. We're next for that one. You've seen the card pack opening in Strange Forest. Here are the videos. There it is. Cyberpunk, the collectible card game. Where you'll have one deck of events and items and cyber enhancements, and another deck of your runners and your operations and your locations to provide more money. And you can go corp, or you can go street, or you can go police. Just a game of kind of an emergent storytelling of, the runners you recruit, the equipment they end up with, the operations they have to deal with. There's some stuff in this game that needs to be clarified, and I'm still waiting on clarification on what counts as a gun, because the scope brings up guns. What counts as a gun for this game? It's not quite clear. It could probably logic it out, but then certain things aren't affected by it, even then. That's right. Uh, Battletech, a game of armored combat. You'll have your giant robots. You'll have a great big field to run around in. You'll move. You'll shoot. You might knock someone over, or might get knocked over yourself. If you're still standing, you can physical attack with punches and kicks and hatchets and swords. Um, you can command battle mechs. You can command infantry and tanks and VTOLs and artillery. You can play just a one-off battle. You can play campaigns. You can paint your mechs to look really awesome. You can paint them to look really weird. Battletech is a long-running game of war and epic craziness and all that stuff. It's just a great game. I'm so glad I got back into it. The people who play are just fun to hang out with. A lot of lore to dig into, there's books and everything else, video games. We were playing a variant of BattleTech called Alpha Strike, which kind of streamlines it and it's good for like um, great big groups of battle mechs and tanks and everything else. I still like the whole classic approach though a little bit more, but I'm glad Alpha Strike exists as an option. All right, this is gonna be the last one because I am not. Do I dig into my RPG collection? Do I? Um, maybe. Hecatomb, collectible card game of semi-transparent cards. I'm not gonna try to open up the box. Hold on. I'm gonna grab one of the spare cards I have lying around. So you'll have your transparent card. Um, you'll be able to stack multiple minions together to create abominations and use them to attack your opponents, to reap their souls, and eventually build up enough to end the world and gain power from it. You'll also have access to fates, which can twist the way the game is. Relics, providing permanent effects. You can call upon the power of one of many dark gods, like the Great Cthulhu, or Nyarlathotep, or Ares, or you know, gods from other mythologies. And every turn you gain a soul, so the game is going to end. Period. Just a matter of when. Very dark game, but as I've said before, sometimes dark can be fun. One of the drawbacks of the game is that sometimes you open up a pack or a starter deck, and one of the cards is broken. See how it's chipped right there? Okay. I just keep it around just because I still like the art and I kind of want to keep it around. It only lasted a year, but it got like two expansion sets. I'm I'm still hung up on the fact that if it had gone one more set, we would have had as a potential god card Yawgmoth. All you Magic fans out there, you know what? You know the significance of that name. Anyway, am I? Do I feature the RPGs? I featured the RPGs before, but this is my entire tabletop game. Let's, you know what? Screw it. Let's go. Uh, Going on to RPGs, we have Pendragon. You are a knight, and during the time of the rise of King Arthur in this court, and you're fighting for glory and honor and all that fun stuff. Your passions can drive you to do things you probably didn't want to do, but you're passionate about it anyway, so what the hell. D20 roll equal to or under system. I got curious about this because something about medieval knights is just interesting to me. But also, I want to believe that this game is less inclined to murder hoboism. I could be wrong. Let me know what your experience with Pendragon is like and how close it was to um, rampant murder hoboism. More RPG. Just go down the line. What I can look at. Dark Souls. This is the closest I will ever have to a D&D game. Um, you're an unkindled one. Takes place in the Dark Souls verse. There's lots of. You will have the usual D20 D&D skills of traits of strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. The one thing you don't have to worry about is alignment. And there's no special races story about you're just an unkindled. There's still room for mystery and other stuff. I've never played the Dark Souls video games, but I like reading about the lore and the verse and all that stuff. I had the board game, but the board game was kind of a letdown. But it is a role-playing game. Maybe check that one out. Next is Genesis. It uses a proprietary dice system and is just a generic role-playing system. Um, I think the proprietary dice system is kind of a bold risk to take, but maybe some people will appreciate it. Um, I primarily picked this up because I want to do like something modern with it. I want to use it as like the basis for Uncity, even though I have my own idea for a unique system for Uncity. But ever since they went to like Edge, the Edge Studio, they're they're trying to keep up. They've done books for Terranoth, for Android, for Keyforge, of all things, for Twilight Imperium. Let's see if they do anything else with it. I know there's still room for Tannhauser, Planet Steam, all that stuff. We'll see what happens. Legend of the Five Rings. It's not just a card game, it's a role-playing game. You get to be samurai or a shugenja to live honorably. Um, got your rings that give you kind of a physical and kind of a mental trait for each one. I picked this up also because I wanted to believe it was less inclined to murder hoboism. Um, but you could potentially play as a party of Ronin and just be the other kind of Ronin who are a bunch of assholes. So wandering around being bandits and shit. But it's I really want to explore this one at some point. Traveler classic science fiction space adventure game. This is the 2022 book. Apparently, there have been in older versions. It is entirely possible to die in character creation, which is part of the game's intro. Yeah, just the idea of being on a spaceship and going on space adventures. That sounds cool to me. I really want to try playing it one of these days. Let's just get the main rule book out of the way. Anima Beyond Fantasy. It is. It's an odd duck of a game. It uses a percentile dice. The world is mystical in a vaguely Christian-esque way. Um, there's it's unusual. It's we've got very specialized roles, like, and sometimes the roles can get like really super specialized. Like there's there are there are wizards, there are mentalists, and then there's wizard mentalists. It's like okay, there's summoners, there's warriors, there's warrior summoners, and there's also warrior mentalists. It's like okay, yeah, this is one I really wanted to dive into a little bit more too. Yeah, Anima. Also an Edge Studio game. This one I just saw discounted at a game store up in Springs. I was like, okay, what is this? Agents of Concordia. You're part of an agency. Um, you're trying to like contain threats and stuff. Um, it's a D12 system, which you can kind of guess by the symbol in the back. Yeah, there's quite a bit to this. A lot of various species to play as, various equipment, various roles to take on. Um, there's the multiverse map of the Singularity, Earth, Concordia Prime, everything. Leading down to the Primal, where apparently threats are trying to make their way past to the Singularity. Very, very unusual game. I'm gonna have to really look into this a little bit more. Uh, Apparently, this is also a Kickstarter thing, so if anyone else is familiar with this game, let me know and tell me what your experience was. Cyberpunk 2020. I know Red's the recent version, but I kind of like the old classic one a little bit more. You know, various roles you can be like rocker boys or girls, techies, solos. Oh, you can even be a cop in this game. That's awesome. Or a media or a fixer. A fixer sounds like a lot of fun too. You can build your story and everything. You go hack some stuff. Combat's apparently really, really brutal. Yeah, Cyberpunk, classic game. I really want to play this one. Maid, the role-playing game. You're a maid. Hijinks ensues. It's a fairly simple system of d6 times your trait, and um, you have to beat a certain difficulty value. Uh, Easy stuff is a 4, and then just ramps up to like 6, 8, 10. 10 is like really the hardest anything should ever be. Because if you have a trait of 2, then you're going to need to roll a 5. If you have a trait of 3, you're going to need to roll at least a 4. And if you're lucky enough to have a trait of 4, then a 3 or better is enough. But still, that's kind of tough. That's still There's still that 1 in 3 chance of failure. But yeah, this is like meant to be comedic and lighthearted and stuff. The game also features rules for seduction, which, if your group is not 100% comfortable with that, you're encouraged to just leave it out and just leave the game as PG-13 as possible. But yeah, it's just a cute game. I'm happy to have it. I've held on to this. This is one of the longest held books in my RPG collection period. It's kind of sort of an RPG, but also kind of sort of not really. It's Fiasco. You have There are dice. There are relations. Um, there are things that people are looking for. They're trying to achieve, but sometimes conflicts of interest do not happen between rational people. This is not a game of rational people. This is a game of people who want what they want, and they might have to butt heads with other people over it. And that's what leads to tragedy and some really dark comedy as well. It doesn't require a game master, but it's worth having someone familiar with the game to kind of, um, help with the mechanical stuff. There's the film. I like the filmography section and um, the various films that have inspired Fiasco. It's fun to like read through these and see. It's like, okay, yeah, I saw that one. Oh, hey, I just watched that one. Oh, I love that one. Office Space. Yeah, that one. I really ought to watch more of these. Yeah, Thelma and Louise, great movie. Yeah. There's also the companion for more sets and everything else. But it's just a storytelling game. I want to play this. I need to play more role-playing and storytelling games and get my mind going on this path. All right. And second to last game I'm featuring today. 316 Carnage Amongst the Stars. You're a space marine, basically. You're fighting aliens. Don't question the reason why you're fighting aliens. You're fighting aliens. And they all have to. It is a D10 system of rolling equal to or under. You want to try to roll as close to a number as possible without going over. You only have two major stats, combat value and non-combat value. Um, you can take like 3 stages of damage and then you're dead. You have armor that's usable once per session. You have combat stims that let you reroll, I think. But ultimately, it's just kind of a dark comic game of being a space marine, basically. I know Helldivers has begun, again, the recent focus as a video game, but if you like Helldivers or Starship Troopers or um, 40K, this might be one to look into. Um, did I say second to last? This, I don't have the rulebook for it, but as an honorable mention, I want to feature Dungeons and Dragons Chain Riddle. It's the trying to think what's the setting? Broken Sword or Broken Coast? Broken something. Um, setting or an area of a setting of somewhere into the Forgotten Realms. But you'll have your faction stuff. You'll have your command, and our command points and your troops. And rolls are on a d20 for hitting and all that stuff. This is just a game from my past that is like nostalgic for. It's like I want to have this stuff again, even if I don't know how to play. I need to go find the rule book for it because I actually do want to play. I'll have to find the starter set. Hopefully it's intact. It has all the pieces and the rule book. For some reason, finding the rule book for this game separately is a pain in the butt. There's an older game that's also called Chainmail, but it's its own system. But I remember this game very fondly, and I just wanted to have my first ever faction for it again. So, last thing I feature in my gaming collection. Bear with me. I'm hoping the camera doesn't go flying up and reveal my face. So, here. And it doesn't disconnect. Do you think I'd forget about Cloud Fantasy? I would be a fool if I forgot about Cloud Fantasy. You have your little stack of chips, you throw them onto a plane space. You are trying to get your chips close to your base, your chips that are worth cloud points staying in play, and you're trying to eliminate your opponent's chips that were worth cloud points. The last chip thrown in the game is worth 0, period. But can still be worth that bonus point for being close to the base. You throw the chip, it lands, you resolve certain abilities first, and then resolve other abilities. And then your opponent throws their chip. It's entirely possible for each player to have their own unique faction stack and have a multiplayer game. It's wild as hell. You can use gigantic playing spaces and use the gigantic playing space side of the ruler instead of the regular. Um, you can play with an advantage for uh, players who might be having difficulty with dexterity, so they can use the red notches of the ruler. It is just a wild, silly, fun game, and it's also low on BGG, but you know what? Sometimes you just go with what you think is fun. The art on the chips is really nice. For most of the chips. There's also a fifth faction to collect that is only does really freaking hard to find. A dragon. I want to find enough dragon chips to make a stack. So play, if you also have dragon chips for the game, let me know. That is everything. That is the entirety of my tabletop game collection. I have been into tabletop gaming for more than half of my life. From the board games and cards I played with as a kid to the board games I play now. It's been an interesting journey, and I'm glad I could share the games that I love with my audience and just people in general. If you've never played a board game before, find one, find someone to play with, and just play. Because you never know, you might have fun. You might really love it. And on this channel, we love tabletop games. I love them. Hopefully, you love them too. All right. Thanks for watching this holy crap 4 hour uh, stream. It was going to be a video, but I wasn't sure how long it's going to take me. So now I get to commence the journey of figuring out where I'm going to put all these games. Because I've been meaning to redo my shelves. But yeah. Thanks for watching. There you go. This has been Pillar Nexus. I will see you next time. Take care, everybody. And thank you for coming.